Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome everyone in today's class for the first intermediate grade. Our textbook is Super Goal 2 and today we will cover then and now grammar and listening. This lesson will be presented by me, teacher Mazna Harbi, and the sign language by Mr. Salih Al-Ajan. So let's begin. Our objectives in today's lesson, we hope that at the end of this lesson you will be able to use simple past of be in sentences and questions, use the verb born, and describe the life of a famous person depending on audio material. Before we do this, let's make quick revision on our last lesson. Last lesson we have talked about a very important cities, which is Riyadh and Jeddah. And we said that we compare what Riyadh was back then and what is it actually now. And we talked about the old palaces and the old Saudi state and in Riyadh, and also we talked about the modern times where we talk about new buildings and new skyscrapers. And also in Jeddah, we have talked about Al-Balad, the old part of Jeddah, and how it was built in the past. We said that it has many wooden balconies and the roads were narrow just to protect the pedestrians from the wind and also from the hot weather. And also now Jeddah became a very modern port city that has tall buildings, beautiful homes, and wide range of stores. Not only this, but also we have read about a famous person who has lived in both two cities, which was Majid Abdullah. And we said that he was a famous footballer who was born in Jeddah, but he was raised in Riyadh. And also we have read about his achievements as a footballer, and we said that he has scored he has a lot of national records, like for example scoring 5 goals in international game and also 4 goals during the Summer Olympics. And also now with the quick check, we have a vocabulary exercise where I told you to mark the information about buildings and materials and size of each cities. So by reading those two texts about Riyadh and Jeddah, we can elicit some information that were mentioned about the city and the buildings and also the material and the size of the city. We talked about that Riyadh used to be 1,500 square kilometers and now it is way more than this. And also with Jeddah, we said now it became a modern port city. And also we have answered the questions with yes or no about different information for Riyadh and also for Jeddah. So now I would like you please to open your books on page 58. I would like you please to open your books on page 58. On page 58, we have a new form of a new grammar rule, which is the verb to be. And how can we use the verb to be in the past? What do you mean by the verb to be? We mean by the verb to be, which is am, is, and are. And how can we use these verbs in the past? We use them in two ways. The first one is was. We use was, but only with these 4 subjects, I, he, she, it. And we use were with only these 3 subjects, you, we, and they. And why do we use it? We use it to talk about a past, to talk about something that's happened in the past. So here also we have the negative form. Here we use the 4 subjects, I, he, she, it, and we use it with wasn't. And the 3 subjects, you, we, they, we use it with weren't. So for example, I was famous. I was famous. It means that at a certain time in the past, I was famous. I'm not anymore. And also, if we want to use it in the negative form, we would say I or he wasn't famous. It means that in the past, he wasn't famous. And pay attention here that wasn't and weren't is the past form of was not and were not. So we usually use the verb to be in the past, which is was and were, just as a past form of am, is, and are. And also in question, this is how can we make a short questions with the past or the past tense with verb to be. So we can start with was. Was I famous? Was he famous? So we always start with this kind of verb. And also with where, we can say, were they famous? This is a question. And as always, as with all the tenses that we introduce or we read about, we always have the same answer. So we always start with either yes or no, and then comes the subject, and then the auxiliary verb or the question word that we have used. For example, was he famous? Yes, he was. Were they famous? No, they weren't. So this is how can we answer a short questions. So let's now make a simple exercise. I would like you now to have a look at these times, 8 a.m. and 9 p.m. and 4 p.m. And here I would like to ask you a question. Just think of these times yesterday, okay? And answer this question. Where were you at those times? So let's say yesterday at 8 a.m. Where were you? You can say, I was at school. Okay, and where were you at 9 p.m.? You can say, for example, I was having dinner. And, for example, where were you at 4 p.m.? You can say, I was doing my homework. So just think of these active or these times and think of yesterday. Where were you at those times? And try to write down the answers that suit each time. So here I have wrote an example. So at 4 o'clock, I wasn't at home, I was at school. At 4 o'clock, you can use the negative and the affirmative form. So at 4 o'clock, I wasn't at home, I was at school. So now I encourage you to use the similar sentences of different times. And also from our last lesson, we learned how can we use or how can we talk about with the time and also the place of our birth. And we said that how can we answer it. So, for example, I was born, we use it just to indicate the time or the place of your birth. So let's have a look at these examples. Where were you born? Where were you born? So you can answer similar question as I was born in Oman. I was born in Oman. So not only the place, you can also use the same answer or the same format when you're talking about time. For example, I was born in Oman, or I was born in 1999, or I was born in January the 2nd. So it also works for a time and also for a place. Let's see the other example here. Where was he or she born? So not only you can use the same set or the same form of this question with a third person. For example, where was he born? We can answer like this. He was born in Kuwait, or she was born in Kuwait. So whether you're talking about yourself by using I was born, or you're talking about a third person, he or she, so we have the same format, and that cannot be changed. So now let's try to answer a couple of questions here. Here we have conversations, and what we need to do here is try to complete these conversations using either was or wasn't, or where or weren't. So let's try the first one as an example. The first one says, here we have a conversation. A is the first party, and B is the second one. So A, blank, your father born in the States. Your father born in the States. So here I want to make a question. I want to make questions. So what should I choose? Should I choose was or where? Well, it depends on the subject. And by having a look of this subject, your father, then of course I'm going to use was. I'm going to use was. And why did I use was? Because I'm talking about one person. Was your father? I'm talking about one person here. So, was your father born in the state? No, he. And as we have learned, how can we use the negative answer when we have a similar question to this? Excellent. We simply use was and we add not to it. So we would say, no, he wasn't. No, he wasn't. Let's move on to the other sentence. He Planck born in Europe. He Planck born in Europe. And since we are using we are using born, so in this time we should use only. Very good. We should only use was. He was born in Europe. So the conversation continues. Where in Europe, Planck, he born? Where in Europe, Planck, he born? And since we're talking about he, a one person, then we use was. And also to continue the answer, he was born in Poland. He was born in Poland. So this is how can we answer the first conversation. So it is very important that we have a look at the subject and then we can decide whether to use was or where. So let's try to answer number two, conversation number two. Number two, what Planck your father's first job? So here again, he's asking about one person, your father. So here we should use was. What was your father's first job? The other one, he and his brother Planck waiters. He and his brother Planck waiters. So here we're not talking about one person, here we're talking about two. He and his brother. So in this case, we should not use was, we should use where because there are two of them. He and his brother. And let's continue. How old Planck they? How old Planck they? So here I'm also going to, I'm talking about two people here, not or two persons, not one. And here we have the subject they, and we have learned that we use they with where and not with was. So how old were they? They weren't very old, 17 and 15. They weren't. It means they are not very old. They 17 and 15. So here, as you can see, these are the answers of conversation one and conversation number two. Now let's try to continue the rest of these conversations. Number three, how Planck the graduation party? So here I'm talking about one party. So of course I'm going to use was. How was the graduation party? And since we're still talking about that graduation, the other answer will be, of course, was. It was great because we're still talking about that graduation party. And next, who was there? Who was there? We're asking about the people who joined that graduation party. And we said that all our friends, and here since we are talking about friends, not only one friend, but friends, more than one, then here in this case we use where. All of our friends were there. And number four, what Planck Oscar like? So here again we're talking about one person. So we would say, what was Oscar like? And since we are using he, we would say he was very smart. He was very smart. And now, the next one, we're going to use where. Where his grades good. Here we're talking about not one grade, but grades. Grades in different subjects. So this is why we use where. Were his grades good? No, they were not. Or no, they weren't. This is how can we answer or how can we complete an answer starts with no. Now, let us move on to continue and try to answer number 5. Number 5, blank, you late for school. You late for school. And here, what should we use? What should we use? Either was or were. Since here we're using the subject you, then in this case we use were. And he would say, yes, I was. Because the subject is I, then I use was. Why the bus was late. The bus, only one bus, was late. And number 6, blank the hotel comfortable. The hotel comfortable. I'm talking about here one hotel. So in this case, I'm going to use was, and the answer will be yes, it, since we're using the subject it, the answer would be was. It was okay. And let's continue. What was the weather like? The weather. What was the weather like? The answer will be it was, since here we're using the subject it was terrible. So here you go. These are the answers of 5 and 6. Now, I would like you please to turn to page 59. Turn your books to page 59. On page 59, as you can see from the pictures on that page, you're going to work with a partner. Imagine that you went on a vacation to these places, the places that you can see. Ask and answer about your vacation. Use the adjectives in the box. So just try to make different questions about these different places. And what should you use? You should use the same format here with different adjectives. Let's read those adjectives. If you had a great impression, if you like your trip, you're going to use adjectives like great, okay, interesting, awesome, beautiful. And if you don't like it, or if you don't like your vacation, you can use the negative adjectives like it was bad, terrible, boring, uncomfortable, or crowded. So let's make now examples on these pictures, and you can follow the same format of that example with using different adjectives. So you can have an example like this. When you ask someone, how was your vacation? He would say, it was great. If he said it was great, then your response will be, that is good. Or if he says that it was boring, then your response will be, that is too bad. So now I made a couple of examples about these pictures. Let's try to read them now, and then you can come up with your own questions using your own adjectives. So the first one here, the first picture we have is the Great Wall from China. So I can ask someone by saying, how was your vacation in China? And when he says, it was interesting, I would say, that is good. This is how can I respond to something that is positive. This is how can I respond to something that is positive. Let's read about the other picture. How was your vacation in Mexico? How was your vacation in Mexico? And if the other person said, it was terrible, he didn't like it, then in this case we would say, that is too bad. This is how can I respond to a negative adjective. Let's continue with the examples. How was your vacation in Brazil? It was awesome. And also, if you want to use or if you want to compliment or respond to a positive adjective, we would say that is good. So as we can see here, this is the Sugarloaf in Rio de Janeiro in Brazil. Now, let's continue. How was your vacation in Italy? When he said it was crowded, this is a negative adjective. It was crowded. Then the proper response to such a negative adjective, I would say, that is too bad. So you can, as I said, come up with your own questions and your own adjectives to these places. You can also suggest different places to ask to ask your partner or a friend. Now, We have reached the listening exercise. Now let's continue and try to listen. So as you can see on the same page, you're going to see a similar table. What you need to do is to listen to the description of the life of Majid Ahmed Abdullah and try to complete the information. So here we have 5 information that are for you to complete. The first one is his nickname. What is his nickname? And the second one, the schools. And the third one, the football experience before Al-Nasr. And number 4, the national records. And number 5, the national team. So pay attention that we're going to listen to this exercise twice. The first time, you only listen for listening. And for the second time, you listen and try to write down answers. So let's begin.
Majid Ahmed Abdullah, nicknamed Arabian Pele, is the best football striker in the history of Saudi Arabia. He was born in Jeddah on November 1, 1959. His father was a football manager. So Majid grew up in a home where football was the main topic of interest. As a young student at Al Jazaria Elementary School, he used to watch the older kids play football all the time, learning as much as possible. A couple of years later, he started playing for his school and neighborhood team as a goalkeeper. Then, one day, when the team striker was absent, Majid replaced him and led his team to a surprising 3-1 victory. That was the beginning of his career as a young footballer. Majid was a student at the Al Mutawasta Al Thaniya High School, when he and his friends formed a team that participated in a tournament and won. Soon after, Majid joined the Al Nasser Football Club, and played for youth teams from 1975 to 1977. He joined the under-17 national team of Saudi Arabia in 1977, and went on to score 7 goals in 3 matches in the Tabriz Championship. He became a member of the senior national team in 1978, and participated in all the major games for 16 years. The total number of goals that Majid scored during his career reaches the record number of 549 goals. Majid won Premier League trophies for his team and titles such as Top Scorer, Arabian Player of the Century, and more. He holds 2 national records.
Now, we have listened for the first time. Now we're going to listen for the second and the final time. So here, what I need you to do after we finish the second one, to try to write down some ideas or answers if you know them when we finish listening. So now let's listen for the second time.
Majid Ahmed Abdullah, nicknamed Arabian Pele, is the best football striker in the history of Saudi Arabia. He was born in Jeddah on November 1, 1959. His father was a football manager. So Majid grew up in a home where football was the main topic of interest. As a young student at Al Jazaria Elementary School, he used to watch the older kids play football all the time, learning as much as possible. A couple of years later, he started playing for his school and neighborhood team as a goalkeeper. Then, one day, when the team striker was absent, Majid replaced him and led his team to a surprising 3-1 victory. That was the beginning of his career as a young footballer. Majid was a student at the Al Mutawasta Al Thaniya High School, when he and his friends formed a team that participated in a tournament and won. Soon after, Majid joined the Al Nasser Football Club, and played for youth teams from 1975 to 1977. He joined the under-17 national team of Saudi Arabia in 1977, and went on to score 7 goals in 3 matches in the Tabriz Championship. He became a member of the senior national team in 1978, and participated in all the major games for 16 years. The total number of goals that Majid scored during his career reaches the record number of 549 goals. Majid won Premier League trophies for his team and titles such as Top Scorer, Arabian Player of the Century, and more. He holds 2 national records.
Very well. Now we have finished listening to this text. Now it's time to answer. So let's begin with the first one. His nickname. According to the text you have just listened to, what is his nickname? Very good. Yes, he was called the Arabian Bilal. And also, what about schools? The text have mentioned something about the schools. Do you remember what that thing is? Very well. That Al Jazeera Elementary School, and he went also to Al Mutawassita Al Thaniya High School. So, what about his football experience before Al Nasr? What do you know about this? Very good. So he was a goalkeeper for his school and neighborhood team. He formed a team with his friends when he was in high school. What about number 4, the national records? The listening text have mentioned something about the national records. So his achievement in the national records, he has 2 of them. And the final one, the national team, what about his achievement? He was his achievement was his under-17 national team in 1977, and also he joined the senior national team in 1978 for almost 16 years. So here are the answers of the listening text we have just listened to. Before we finish, don't forget that on page 116 on your workbook, check for practice with the grammar of this unit. And now we have reached the end of our lesson. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.